So let's keep this going with the difficulty adjustment. It looks like we're okay. So within the Bitcoin network, one term you've probably heard before is hash rate. And me personally, the first 100 times I heard hash rate, my brain just shut off. I didn't hear a word that anybody said after that. So hopefully that's not you, but that was me. But this is how I want you to think about hash rate. Whenever somebody plugs in a miner, so we just talked about what the miners are doing there. They're just spitting out a whole bunch of guesses, trying to guess the block equation. So every time somebody plugs in a miner, they add their electricity from the real world into the wall and start making guesses there. The hash rate goes up. When somebody unplugs a miner from the wall, they take their power, their electricity out of the Bitcoin network, their hash rate goes down. And there's new blocks every 10 minutes, right? So this is an important part to understand. The hash rate goes up when somebody plugs in a miner. The hash rate goes down when somebody unplugs a miner. So there's new blocks every 10 minutes on average, right? So we can see it's not exactly 10 minutes every time. You can see that this one was 35 minutes ago, and this one was 24 minutes ago, and then this one took about, what is that? 16 minutes? And then this one took 7. So it's not exactly every 10 minutes there. It is on average every 10 minutes, or every time somebody solves the block equation. That's when a new block is mined. So you might ask yourself, why is it 10 minutes? Why wouldn't it be every minute? It seems like we could have more transactions that way, right? Why would we limit it to be every 10 minutes? Why wouldn't it be every 10 seconds? Because if there's new blocks every 10 seconds, we could have way more transaction fees, and we could have bigger blocks, and we wouldn't have to pay as many fees, and it'd be more accessible to everybody. But the reason why the blocks are spaced out 10 minutes apart is so that the Bitcoin network can be in consensus. That's a big part of it, because every time there's a new block mined, the entire network has to say, okay, that block is legitimate. The transactions within that block are legitimate. And then you move to the next one. But if you're trying to do that every 10 seconds and you're trying to get the whole Bitcoin network to agree that that was indeed a valid block, then as soon as something goes out of whack, it's screwed. And that's why you've seen so many issues with blockchains like Solana, like Ethereum, like XRP, because they have much faster, much less time between blocks. I think Solana's is like every 2 seconds, there's a new block mined. Litecoin, the same. So the problem with that, actually, I don't know about that Litecoin. I don't want to misspeak here. But some of those other blockchains, the blocks come in a lot faster so they can handle more transactions. So the fees are much lower. They're more transactional currencies. But the problem with that is as soon as they get out of whack, out of consensus, the network just shuts down, because they don't know which chain is right, which blockchain is right anymore. Once it gets out of whack, and there's more blocks coming behind it, right? So that's why the Bitcoin blockchain is much slower. It's much more secure, because it has to get into consensus. Everybody has to agree that that block was indeed valid, and the transactions within that block were valid. So that's why it's every 10 minutes. So this is where the difficulty adjustment comes in, because you have to think about, if somebody wanted to take down the Bitcoin network, what could they do? Well, they could plug in a whole bunch of miners, try to increase the odds of hitting a block, try to get those blocks coming in faster, try to get the network out of consensus, and basically stop whatever's going on in Bitcoin. That could happen. Well, it could without the difficulty adjustment, right? And we'll give an example of what that could look like in a sec. But this is kind of what you need to understand about the difficulty adjustment. This is kind of the main takeaway, these 2 lines here. So when the hash rate is up, when there's a lot of people mining, when there's a lot of competition, that means that there's more guesses. There's more guesses per second happening, which means that it's more likely to solve the block equation. If there's more guesses coming in, the block equation is going to be solved quicker, which means that the blocks are going to be coming in too fast. So in that case, that's when the difficulty adjustment goes up. And this happens, the Bitcoin network, every 2016 blocks, the difficulty adjustment is changed. And it could go up, it could go down. It all depends on how much hash rate, how many people are mining. So on the flip side of that, when the hash rate is down, there's less people mining, there's less competition, there's less guesses, the blocks are coming in slower because there's less people mining, there's less guesses, which means that it's going to take longer for the next block to be mined. So the blocks are coming in slower. So that's when the Bitcoin network turns the difficulty down because they want it to speed up after that. So they turn the difficulty down, they make it easier for the miners who are competing, and that should bring the blocks back to it self-regulates itself. That's the big idea here. There's no Jerome Powell. There's no Federal Reserve. There's no Central Bank of London that gets to decide this. This is written within the Bitcoin code and the Bitcoin algorithm, the difficulty adjustment. So there's no human that's capable of changing that. Every 2016 blocks, the difficulty goes up or it goes down. And I'll show you what that looks like here on the mempool as well. So you can see right here that the average block time is about 10 minutes. That's what we want to make sure that the network can be in consensus. So you can see here last time, the previous difficulty adjustment was an upwards one of 6.81%. So when you see that, what do you think of? What was probably happening that caused the difficulty adjustment to go up? Well, if you said that there was a lot of miners, there was a lot of guesses, there was a lot of hash rate, you would be correct. Because when the hash rate's up, there's more guesses and the blocks are coming in too fast. So that means that they have to crank up the difficulty adjustment, not they, it, the Bitcoin network, cranks up the difficulty adjustment to get that block time to be back to around 10 minutes on average. So this is the self-regulation of the Bitcoin network, the difficulty adjustment. So right now you can see that it looks like in the next 979 blocks, we're going to have an upwards adjustment because we're 4 blocks ahead. So when we're ahead, that means the difficulty adjustment has to go up because it has to be harder for the miners to make sure that the blocks aren't coming in too fast. And this was a big one because last week, for the first time in Bitcoin's history, we hit zettahash. So I'll show you. You can use this website here, Mempool. It also shows all the mining details. So you can see right there, look at that. We hit an all-time high in hash rate. We hit an all-time high in the amount of people who are mining Bitcoin last week. So you can see it right there. 1,025 exahash or 1.025 zettahash. It was the first time that the Bitcoin network hit zettahash, which might not seem like a big deal, but if we zoom out here, we can see that we were in exahash territory for almost 10 years. So this is back in October 25th, 2017. The hash rate at the time was 11 exahash per second. And for the first time, you can see it go from 11 to 100 to 150. This is where China decided that they were going to mine or ban mining. Okay, so this is what's happening here. Sorry for anybody who doesn't care, but that dog that I saw walking down the road looks like it came into the yard, and him and Arnie are now playing on the deck. So I'm guessing that's why Arnie was barking, because he saw a dog outside. So anyways, this is where China banned mining. So it went from 186 exahash all the way down to 100 exahash. So it basically got cut in half. But within the next, 6 months, it got right back to where it was. The miners moved out of China. The hash rate geographically dispersed out of China. And we were right back to where we were. And from there, we have basically 10x'd since then. So that's part of the reason why this network is so resilient. That's a perfect example. China, one of the biggest countries, if not the biggest country on the planet, decided that their citizens weren't allowed to mine Bitcoin anymore. They banned it. The hash rate dropped for about 6 months, and then we were right back to where we were before. So going back to where we were there, that's why the difficulty adjustment was cranked up to 7% increase, because there was so much hash power there. So usually what happens there then is when the difficulty adjustment gets cranked up, it's harder for miners to find a block, right? And so that's typically what happens. You can see that whenever there's a big spike, whenever there's a big upwards adjustment, that's when people usually power down, because they're like, well, it doesn't really make sense for me to be mining here if the difficulty's this cranked up. So that's why we usually see, like, all of these, whenever it spikes up, it always crashes back down, because people unplug their miners because they're like, well, we can't compete in this environment here. It's too much. So we're just going to unplug the miners. So there's always a big drop that follows a spike within the hash rate there. Super interesting stuff. So this is kind of the last part that I want to talk about here. And so this is what could happen on the Bitcoin network, and this is why the difficulty adjustment is so critical. So let's say that you had a country and they wanted to stop Bitcoin. Too many of their citizens were swapping their illusionary fake dollars for Bitcoin. And so this country decided that it wants to try to stop the Bitcoin network. They want to overwhelm it. They want to attack it and try to screw things up in Bitcoin. So before the attack, we got 1 zettahash. That's what we just looked at there. We set the all-time high in hash power. So the blocks are coming in every 10 minutes. Let's say that Russia decides that they don't want Bitcoin to be a thing anymore. So they're just waiting. They start preparing this. They're preparing for 6 months, a year. They're getting ready for this attack. They're going to put all of their power into the Bitcoin network, and they're going to try to get these blocks coming in too fast and basically throw the network out of consensus. So they take all of their country's energy. At one point, they just decide, okay, here it is. It's D-Day here. We're going to attack the Bitcoin network. So all of a sudden, the hash power goes from 1 zettahash to 10 zettahash, because all of the power, all of the electricity in Russia is now pointed towards the Bitcoin network. So in that case, based on, the math, this might be wrong. These are just kind of like big picture. Don't worry about the details here. But let's say that they pump in 10 zettahash, which we know is going to be impossible. But who knows? All of their resources in their country are now pointing towards the Bitcoin network. So now the blocks are coming in every 1 minute. That's what they want. They want to try to get the network out of consensus. But because of the difficulty adjustment, that will only last for 2016 blocks, or about 2 weeks. And then their little attack is over, because the difficulty adjustment will crank back up and the blocks will start coming in every 10 minutes again. So all the money that they spent trying to attack Bitcoin, trying to get the network out of consensus, is for nothing. All for nothing. Because when that new difficulty adjustment kicks in, it's going to slow it way down. And at the time, it might seem like a big deal. For 2 weeks, there might be mayhem. But after that, if you zoom out for like 50 years here, that's just going to be a little wee blip on the radar, just like when China banned mining. So it'll be a total waste of money. Total waste of money. They might as well just take that money and buy Bitcoin and be part of this instead of trying to fight it. That's why there's no incentives for countries or anybody to try to stop Bitcoin, because every 2 weeks, it's going to self-regulate itself and go back to every 10 minutes because of the difficulty adjustment. So the other part there is they could actually say, you know what, Bitcoin's very valuable, and we want to try to get as much of this as we can. So just to go back there again, so that would be a complete waste of money for them. They would basically all for nothing. That attack would be all for nothing after 2 weeks. And the hash rate would be up, which means that the network is actually more secure than it was before they tried the attack. And Bitcoin is still stuck in time, which is a very important part of this whole thing to understand. And let me take this off for just a sec because this is a key part of it. So with an asset like gold, one of my favorite lines from Jack Mallers was at a presentation he gave where he said, "Gold is stuck in the ground, and Bitcoin is stuck in time." So think about that. Gold is stuck in the ground, and Bitcoin is stuck in time because of those 10-minute increments. There's no way, and the difficulty adjustment, there's no way for you to get Bitcoin before it's scheduled to be mined. It's stuck in the future. It's stuck in time. So regardless of how many people want Bitcoin, you cannot shortcut that. It's stuck in the future. And you might say, well, if every country is mining Bitcoin, the blocks are going to start coming in faster. Yes, for 2 weeks. And then it's going to self-regulate, and then it's going to go back to every 10 minutes. So it is literally stuck in time. And if you compare that to gold, gold's stuck in the ground. So if every person on earth decided that they wanted to get a gold ounce, we could go and dig it up. Go to the Grand Canyon, go to the Chocolate Mountains, go to the sun, find an asteroid, go to El Salvador. There's a ton of gold that's in the ground that is yet to be discovered. So if there's more demand for gold, you can go and dig more gold out of the ground. Gold is stuck in the ground. Bitcoin is stuck in time. That's the key difference here between the two assets. And the reasons why Bitcoin's stuck in time is because of the things like the difficulty adjustment. So you cannot shortcut Bitcoin. You cannot cheat Bitcoin. And regardless of the demand, supply cannot increase. It's a very important part of this. Roy says all the 21 million Bitcoin already exist. They're stuck in time. Exactly. That is a green light coming on in the world. Bitcoin is stuck in time. The Bitcoin already exists. It's on schedule. Every 10 minutes, there's going to be new Bitcoin that are mined, new Bitcoin added to the supply. It's on schedule. And the difficulty adjustment is what makes sure that in 100 years from now, it's still going. It's not 50 years from now. It's right on schedule because of the difficulty adjustment. It's stuck in time. The 21 million Bitcoin exist already. We just got to wait. Every 10 minutes, more Bitcoin is mined and put into circulation there. So that's what I got for you. And it looks like we just received a hefty zap here. Okay, let me round this out though for the 365 days of Bitcoin crew. So I'm thinking I'll have to break these up into like 4 different. This dog's right here now. Look at this. What? What is going on? I have no idea whose dog that is. But Arnie's going wacko inside right now. Anyways, for the 365 days of Bitcoin crew, I don't know if I'm going to split this up into 2 or 4 or whatever it is, but hopefully that helps you understand it a little bit better. Hopefully, if you watch this live stream back sometime, you'll be able to see all the FUD that's thrown at Bitcoin by people who don't understand Bitcoin. What I talked about today basically addresses all of that FUD. All of it. And when you understand the difficulty adjustment, when you understand UTXOs, when you understand sending on-chain versus basically a slush fund, on-chain versus Lightning, how it all works together. If you looked at any amount of FUD, whether that's environmental, whether that's countries can attack it, countries can shut it down, anything that you've ever heard around Bitcoin, rewatch this video and you'll probably find a reason why it is just FUD. And the people who are talking about that kind of stuff do not understand Bitcoin. Their green light has not come on yet. So I hope this helps. This will be, I'm going to probably do this again for day 200 in the course here to kind of just keep this stuff top of mind, because again, when you take a look behind the curtains, you can understand this asset a lot better. And that's what you want. We want as many green lights around the world as possible.